Please enjoy this message from David Arquette sent in by the fabulous Carrie Tenney.
Hey Ryan, how are you? Thanks for doing the Scream podcast.
Like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Curly, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I truly appreciate everybody out there who supports the podcast either by listening every week, supporting me on social media, or subscribing to the Patreon. So if you haven't subscribed to the Patreon of Scream with Ryan C. Showers, there are so many amazing opportunities that come along with this. So in season 6, we're going to be offering what I'm calling 30 Years of Scream, 30 Questions, a Scream with Ryan C. Showers interview. So this will be offered to eligible Patrons after 3 months of subscription. You get to come on with me for 30 minutes and have an interview where I ask you 30 speedrun questions, but also some deep questions about Scream and your Scream personality and what Scream means to you and how you've also experienced Scream since it's come back to life in the mainstream. That is coming in season 6. Subscribe and you can come on and have a one-on-one with me and celebrate 30 years of Scream for its 30th anniversary. In addition to the interview that's coming in season 6, joining the Patreon gets you access to our community group chats on Instagram. You can come to the group Zooms, which are held quarterly, and the eligibility to come on the podcast with me for main topic episodes by request. Also with the Patreon comes a monthly bonus episode. For most months, I'm going to be releasing an audio commentary of a Scream movie or a Scream-related film. Some months we'll be releasing a group Zoom episode on Patreon that is just released to the Patreon, not the public. I've really enjoyed doing the audio commentaries. I have a library of them at this point. I've done the first 4 Scream films. I've done Halloween. I've done A Nightmare on Elm Street. I've done Halloween H2O. I Know What You Did Last Summer, etc., etc., etc. And I'm so excited to continue doing these as we go into season 6. I need to thank the producers of the podcast. They include TJ Jones, who does all of the graphic design work for the episode title cards. I need to thank Ashley Summers, who is my Taylor Swift girl. She helps me with the Taylor Swift song of the week, but also with the Scream game of the week that you can find on Instagram. Usually we post on Wednesday or Thursday mornings, and you can find her at SquirrelandSpud9 on Instagram. And I also need to thank my friend Fernando. He is FN Prescott on Instagram, and he also runs the Isabel May Online Instagram profile. He helps me with posts throughout the week to keep the social media and Scream love alive. I've had many wonderful experiences and adventures with this podcast, including being on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. Back in 2022, I was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal. So crazy. But none of this would be possible without the people who follow me and support me on social media. So if you haven't subscribed to my profiles there, I'm Scream with RCS across social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Also, if you could please do me a solid and give me 5 stars on Apple or Spotify, that would really go a long way and help me out. In addition, I need to thank the stab investors and daddy ghost faces of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. First, Mama Ghostface, I need to thank Carrie Tenney. I also need to thank daddy ghost faces Corey Wilson, Brett Janovich, and Andrew Dominguez. I need to thank stab investors, including Josh Carr, Amar Karim, Kevin Abner, Ali, Roy Garza, Stevie Shears, P. Dougie05, Gustavo Mora, Mark Vieira, Scream Queens Podcast, both Josh and Justine, Joey Nobarini, aka The Vault, Ryan Not Dying Young, David D, Jess Mariano, Sam Levy, Tamika Jones, Josh Camilleri, Ivan Valance, Christian Ranke, and John Cardy. All right, everyone, thank you. Please enjoy the rest of the episode and consider subscribing to the Patreon, and you can come on for your Scream interview. 30 years of Scream, 30 questions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. We're continuing to talk about Scream 7. What else would we be doing right now? Someone asked me, so, like, when are you going to stop talking about Scream 7? And I'm like, what do you expect? Like, we're a Scream podcast. We have a new movie that I love. And it's funny because whenever I was, like, sending out the link for tonight, I literally titled this, like, Why Scream 6 Sucks and Why Scream 7 Slays, which, you know, it is what it is. Please welcome my friend, Amar. Hey, Amar.
Hey, Ryan, how are you?
So it's funny. Amar literally just sent me a voice memo about like maybe an hour ago saying that like one of his friends' wives calls him Omar. And I find that so hilarious.
Bro, honestly, from high school, I've had Amar, Amir, Umar, Amar, and one guy even when I used to work on the IT department, he would call me Mark. So I was just like, yeah, that's fine. You know, is Mark there? I'm like, yeah, I'm here. So I'll go with it. I'll roll with it.
So despite all of those iterations of your names, right? Somehow you ended up with Michelle.
Exactly. It's so weird, right? And weirdly, Michelle stuck, so why not? Let's just stay with that one.
Exactly. So part of like this discussion is we're going to be talking about Scream 7, of course, but we're also going to be talking about like what we think Scream 7 did better than Scream 6. So going from 6 to 7, in particular, I want to focus on Gail and I want to focus on the twins. And our other guest that's sitting here with us, he and I are pretty aligned here. So I feel like I would love to hear your perception on this because you don't see 100% the way that I do about the twins or our guest here. So it'll be an interesting discussion from your part.
I can't wait because I want to see, I want to hear, I want to see what's going on here because I have opinions, obviously, that for once don't align with Ryan C. Showers fully. So yeah, I'm interested to see what you guys are going to say today.
All right. Well, Amar, please tell everybody where they can find you online.
Online at the moment, it's just on Instagram, and my handle is Amar Ali Kareem, all one word.
Awesome. All right. I want to welcome my second guest here. So the last time you heard from him in a more one-on-one setting was the episode a few months ago we did. It was called How to Fix Scream 6. And it was featuring my friend Tarick. He's been on the podcast maybe a couple other times since then, but I really enjoy him. I find him to be so cool. So he's a Patreon. He's very involved in just like the day-to-day like community of the show and like the social media movement. But he also is like, he's someone who's very plugged in. He knows what's going on. He listens to the show. He keeps up with shit. And to, you know, put a cherry on top, he's very shady and very fun. I feel like I can always like go to him whenever I need to just like be like, you know, like I just want to spew my shade and I'm like, he gets it, you know. So everyone, please welcome my friend Tarick. Hey, Tarick.
Hey, Ryan. How's it going?
I'm doing great. It's nice to have you on the show.
Yes, it's a pleasure being here again. I love talking about Scream, Gail, Sydney, Dewey, especially Scream 2.
Well, Tarick, you are also a huge Gail Weathers fan, and part of like what inspired our previous episode was Gail Weathers in Scream 6 and like being frustrated with how they handled her in Scream 6. And we were hopeful for how Scream 7 could handle her. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on specifically Gail. So like part of the theme of this episode is like, did they fix everything from Scream 6? And I would argue that Scream 7 did. What say you right off the bat?
110% agree. Like, let's just say that I'm happy. Like, if Scream 7 is the last Scream movie we get with Gail, I'm happy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, honestly, it's such a sweet spot to be in, like where it's like I feel at such peace with everything that in Scream 7.
Scream 7 is growing on me every time I watch it. It really is. And, you know, I'm going to say I'm probably one of the very few people that doesn't think Scream 6 is terrible, but I admit that it's very, very flawed. And I know that when we get into the discussion of Mindy and Chad and Gail, there are a lot more things that I have in my mind that will surprise you, I guess. But, you know, for me, despite every guest that comes on, I still think that every single Scream film has its place it deserves to be there, I guess. So,
well,
There was silence, and I can see you both, and I was just like, yeah, they're not agreeing with me at all.
Amar, I do agree with you. Even though with Scream 6, it's a very frustrating movie for me, but it's not the worst in terms of the worst entry in a horror franchise, along with Halloween Resurrection, Jason Goes to Hell, Freddy's Dead, or Jigsaw.
Yeah.
Like, level of awful.
Well, you know, so I want to just kind of like turn it to Tarick first. You know, Tarick, please give us your updated ranking for the Scream movies now that we have Scream 7.
All right, so After I saw Scream 7, my ranking was 2, 1, 4, 3, 7, 5, 6.
Mm-hmm.
But after a month, and we're watching it many times in theaters and, of course, on digital when it came on digital back in, March, it grew on me. There are things I haven't noticed the first 2 or 3 times in theaters, and I noticed more, and I just have a more love, appreciation for this movie. Now, a new ranking is 2, 1, 4, 7, 3, 5, 6.
Beautiful. I just think it's such a cool perspective that you have here. And I love that how much you love Scream 7, yet it's hard for you to even like put it over Scream 4. That's kind of crazy, you know?
I know, it's just Jill's my favorite killer.
Yeah.
Jessica, she's now in my middle ranking. She's in the middle of my ranking. It's just, I wish we got more screen time with her. I just love her so much.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm happy to hear. So you're pro thumbs up finale of Scream 7.
Yes. I'm trying to decide if I prefer 5 or 7 finale. I might give the edge towards 5 because Gail's in there, but for me, it's 5, 7, then 6 in terms of finales.
Cool. You know, that's an interesting question. Do we prefer the 5 finale or the 7 finale? Honestly, overall, I think the 7 finale is better in terms of like the production, in terms of like being a whole package. But I do love specific things about the 5 finale. I love Gail being there. I love the death of Amber. I think both of the killers go out really well. And the Sydney and Gail team up, you know, and even like Sam's moment, I think all that is done really well. I think the aesthetic is better in 7. I think 7 has its own accomplishments and it has the better acting from the killer. So that's a tough question. Amar, what about you? Do you prefer the 5 finale or the 7 finale?
Okay, based on today, I will edge it for 5. I understand what you mean about production value, and I agree with you on that, Ryan. But
Yeah.
there is something about the 5 finale that I really, really enjoy. And that one, again, when I first saw it, I wasn't really hot on it. And it took me a while to really appreciate that one. So I will put 5 over 7 for now.
Okay, cool. Well, so Tarick, let's talk about Scream 7. So what would you like to say about Scream 7, like as your review of the movie?
Scream 7 for me is the true sequel to Scream 4. It's just, it feels like a Scream movie again. And I haven't felt that for the past 15 years. Nothing against 5. I mean, I'm not against 6, but 5. It is a good Scream movie. It's just, it doesn't have that vibe compared to 1 through 4 and 7. Like
Yeah.
with 7, especially, I'm sorry, if there's no Marco Beltrami scoring, there's no Scream movie.
Yeah. Fair enough.
The score helps make 7 feel like it's part 1, 2, 3, and 4 for me. Also, of course, Nev being the main lead again, me feeling like Gail again. Scream 5 Gail, it just feels like she's a good Gail, but not the Courtney Cox Gail that we love.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you know, and like, so you said something to me that really like made it click with me a couple of weeks ago. We were talking and you said something to the effect that Scream 7 isn't a retread of a Scream movie like Scream 5 and 6 were. And that really spoke to me because I think it's such an original Scream movie. It feels like it's charting new territory and doing its own thing and has its own unique identity that isn't just an homage or just a reference to the past. What say you?
Yes. I never understand the critique about 7. It's just the same nostalgia slop. It's not. For me, that would be 5 and 6, especially 6, because those movies are retrends of 1 and 2. 7 feels like a continuing chapter, the evolution of what we went through with Scream 1 through 4, but 15 years later after the last entry. To me, Scream 7 feels fresh. 5 and 6, fresh doesn't mean new characters, but same plot. To me, that's just being lazy, copying and pasting someone's homework. 7, yes, you're bringing back the main lead. What isn't broken, you can't fix.
Well, so we're going to talk about several things here over the next hour with me, Tarick, and Amar, as it pertains to like going from 6 to 7. And one of those things that like we don't really need to go so deep into, but I want to address. I want to give Tarick his moment to discuss about it. Is the fact that we have Sydney Prescott back and having her as the main character again. To me, like, you know, we could look at Sydney going from like Sam to Sydney, which is somewhat unfair, right? I mean, in a way, to Sam, but also just Sydney in 5 to Sydney here. It just feels like we go from such a one-dimensional version of Sydney, which is made great by Nev in Scream 5 with the way that she kind of imbues the humanity into Sydney. But because she's so limited and she's written in such almost like a wooden way at times, in such a in not a non-human kind of a way. I don't ever get the Sidney Prescott ooh la la sensation that I do in Scream 7, where it just feels so naturally Sidney. Tarick, what say you?
I agree, and I hate calling her this in 5, but in 5, she felt a bit too girl bossy
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in 7, she feels like a real person again, like the Cindy we grew up with. But now as a mom, now as a wife. She's not flawless, but she's near. But she does feel organic in 7 compared to 5, where she feels like a stock character.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem is like, and even like of the trio in Scream 5, I think she is the worst in terms of like Dewey is like the acting and like the dimensions that David Arquette is able to play with there, and even the tragedy that Courtney Cox gets to play with. Like comparatively, Nev, she just feels so small and so flat compared to those. She doesn't even. I remember leaving Scream 5 feeling like she didn't even get a big moment. You know, even though the other two did, she didn't. It just feels like we were robbed, and it's just like, you know, imagine like, you know, the main character not getting of like the past 4 movies, not getting a moment in a movie that we're supposed to be passing the torch. Like it just felt so unfair, whereas here this feels like so natural in terms of like you said, this is almost like the direct sequel to Scream 4 in a way. It just feels like a continuation of that world. So Tark, any other thoughts?
I just wish in Scream 5, after Dewey's death, the killer, so it'd be Amber, taking a picture or a video of Dewey's body and sending it to Cindy, and we see her reaction. I would love to see that.
Yeah, me too. A huge red mark of Scream 5, in my opinion. Amar, do you have anything you want to share?
Well, first of all, it's a very, very unfair comparison because you have so much scope and so much material for Sidney Prescott in Scream 7. It's literally her film. So she gets to do everything that Sidney Prescott always does. She gets to, you know, give us all the nuances, the performance, the character. I think in Scream 5, unfortunately, they brought her in just because she's Sidney Prescott. There's no meat to that character, unfortunately. I will say, however, that Neve Campbell does brilliantly with what she's given. She really isn't given a lot, and you can't. It doesn't matter how good an actor you are, if you don't have the material, there's only so much you can do with it. So yeah, you're right in what you're saying about, you know, Gail Weathers and Dewey being brilliant and having moments, because she really doesn't. I mean, I think you and I have discussed this a million times. She's literally everything that you see in the trailer, you see in the film. There's nothing additional for Sidney Prescott except maybe the ambulance scene at the end. So, yeah, they messed up Sidney Prescott. They thought they were doing her some service because, you know, we'll have her in the film, but they didn't really do her justice. And obviously us Scream fans realized that it is the Sidney show because that's the start of Scream. You know, we can say that Ghostface, but Sidney Prescott is such an integral character. She is the main character. So to sideline her in such a way is a bit disrespectful. I understand that they had this new arc that they wanted to follow and new characters, but you still got to give the OG something, and they didn't. So they failed in that every aspect there, I think.
Well, so let's just put aside the OG for a second and talk about Tatum, you know, and this is kind of going from like where I want to like just kind of briefly discuss the idea of Tatum as like, I know that Scream 7 is the Sidney movie. She's undoubtedly the main character, has the most screen time. She drives the movie. It's her movie. But Tatum is written as like the new co-lead with her in a way. And I just kind of want to get some early thoughts here because and this is something that I want to talk about on the podcast basically from now through Scream 8, which is like this idea of Tatum as a really important new main character. But like, how do we think Scream 7 did going from Scream 5 and 6 with Sam as the main new younger lead character to Tatum? And I think that like this is where Tarick and I are going to go right and Amar is going to go left. But Tarick, what are your thoughts here on Tatum as in terms of the way that she was written and the way that she was depicted and acted versus Sam?
Well, with Tatum, so let me start with Sam. So with Sam, she's pretty much the darker, edgier version of Cindy. So pretty much the anti-Cindy. Meanwhile, with Tatum, she is the anti-Tatum Riley. So I find that fascinating in a way. So with both Sam and Tatum being the new lead going forward, I just find, I guess for me personally, I find Tatum to be a more relatable character as being timid, don't like to be compared to her parents, and just she does have an arc in this movie where she feels like she's not good enough, she's not good as a mom, but in the end, she is just like a mom.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, with Sam, she's trying to prove a point, saying that she's not her dad, but she is her dad.
It's so funny the way that they do have very similar arcs, but like it's hard because with Billy, because he's a dark presence and Sydney's a heroic one, I think that also, it definitely makes me more in favor of Tatum just initially, because as for a main character, like I want to root for a hero. I don't want to be rooting for a villain. I think that Scream 5, Sam, is interesting because I have a lot of empathy for her as someone who, had a horrible relationship with her parents, who was involved in the wrong crowd, who did heavy drugs and had a hard life. Like, I have a lot of empathy for that and her not wanting to be seen as a bad person. But yet at the same time, there's something about Sam's journey that isn't so down to earth or relatable compared to what Tatum is. Tatum to me feels like a real person out in the real world in the way that she interacts with, say, the gun, the way that she interacts with her friends, even the way she talks to Sydney. There's something very innocent and real world about her compared to Sam, where Sam feels like a fictional character, whereas Tatum feels like a real life, three-dimensional person. And so that's in the writing, but also I think the acting. I almost feel like Spyglass and Kevin Williamson saw the issues with Sam and Melissa in terms of Melissa's acting in Scream 5 especially was really, really criticized. I think that they were really careful about who they selected, and that made Scream 7 all the better. I think that they not only they picked the right actress who they knew they could do the job, as opposed to Melissa, who Radio Silence didn't even audition back in the day. I think so when you have that dynamic, sure, but also the writing. There is such a clear arc with Tatum, but it's a relatable arc. It's a pure arc. And I think that really separates them and makes Scream 7 a more digestible film. The history with Sydney and Tatum, I think, works really well in terms of Sam and Billy. We're getting these hallucination things and they're fighting and we don't really get a relationship. Whereas in Scream 7, part of the beauty with Tatum is the relationship with Sydney that really aids it. That's kind of why Tatum works so much better as this passing the torch new lead than Sam.
Yes, I agree with everything you just said. It's just for Sam. Sam, in terms of writing, is so flawed. I thought the writing in 5 for Sam was good, but the performance, not so much. Meanwhile, in 6, it's the complete opposite. Melissa was so much better, and then the writing, it's just regressed her to be like, okay, you're just like your dad. And they keep saying you're not your dad, but at the end of Scream 6, you pretty much prove yourself you are just like your dad. Bummer, because I do really want to love Sam. It's just, we could have got a Scream 5 Sam where the writing was right there and Scream 6 performance in 5. And right there, I would say we tie with Sam and Tatum.
And, that's the thing where it is a bummer. It's a bummer as a fan of the character, right?
I have to agree with everything you said. I agree that Tatum is a very relatable character and she has the edge that she has Sydney as a mother and a police father. Obviously, Sam is this anti-hero who has this dark edge and, who's had this very traumatic life. And I see what you're saying. But you see, for me, and again, Tarick, I agree with you what you're saying. It's very conflicting because Melissa Barrera in 5 isn't very convincing in my opinion. There's many scenes where I watched her and I'm like, they could have done a better job here. She improves really drastically in 6. As an actor, I think she's very, very good in part 6, but the character is flawed in its writing. And it's unfortunate because we've done an episode before and I didn't see this and Ryan said that he did. And I get, obviously, with Skeet Ulrich coming out and saying, well, this is where we were taking Sam, the character, which is in hindsight, it's a great thing that it didn't go ahead, the original Scream 7 plan, because I didn't want to see this. I thought that she was an anti-hero that was going to overcome the darkness that's within her. So, yeah, I mean, Tatum has the edge, like I said, because she's got a better role model. And Sam never had that, really. She has no one. Her father's dead. It's a hallucination. It's what her mind is coming up with. And obviously her mother, she's estranged from her mother. So we'll never get to know where that was going to go, I guess, really, because, that story is over. But I really like Sam as a character a lot more than most people do. I root for her. And every time I see Scream 6, I think I only enjoy it because of Melissa Barrera in that film. The film is completely flawed, and I admit that completely. But I think that we need to see another film with Tatum in it, clearly. Yeah. To see how we can compare the two. And it's chalk and cheese. They're never going to be the same type of character. You said, Ryan, just now that they have similar arcs, but realistically, they don't. It's completely different. She's living with her family, is Tatum, and obviously Sam is literally this loner who has come back into the life of her sister and is trying to fight her own demons. So they're completely different characters altogether.
No, you're right. I guess what I meant to say was they have similarly structured arcs where they're both kind of being compared to their parents. Sam's is internal, and I guess is it's not internal. Mindy accuses her of being the killer because of her dad, but like they're both being compared to their legacy parents, and it's a deficiency about their personality in real life. But and they both kind of like grow into whatever version of their parents they want to be. The thing about Sam though, in the writing of Sam, is that I want to give Tatum the extra edge. Is the Kevin Williamson effect. I think that Kevin gives Tatum a much more thematically clean characterization, in terms of like, what Tatum is struggling with. It's very clear, it's outlined. Whereas Sam's, there's so much going on with Sam. They jam-packed so much in there. And at the end of the day, there's such a tendency to rely on girl boss, which I think Tatum is the opposite of girl boss. And that's why I like her. It makes her feel, like I said, so down to earth and such like a real, almost like human being, like someone I would know in real life. And I hope that whatever happens in Scream 8, that they don't go down the girl boss route with Tatum, that they allow her to still continue to grow as this young woman, as this young high school girl, kind of into the next phase of her life, but still retaining what made her special. So, Tarick, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I completely agree. We do need another Tatum movie. Like, I'm surprised we didn't get a phone call with Tatum in this movie, but that's an idea for a new movie. So I'm hoping to see more growth with Tatum. Hopefully she's like the new Allison from the latest Halloween trilogy, where each movie we get to see more progression, more development for her. And hopefully they don't regress the character like they did with Sam.
Can I just be very controversial? If I had to rank Tatum, Allison, and Sam, it would be in that order. That may be controversial. Tarick, what do you think?
For me, it'd be Allison, then Tatum, then Sam.
Wow.
And then if I include I Know What You Did Last Summer, Ada would be last.
Okay, fair enough. I like that. But I have a huge crush on Andi Matichak. I have a girl crush on her, bad. So, Amar, you gasped at Tarick putting Allison first. You're like, what are you guys smoking over there in America, right?
Yeah, honestly, no. I'm gonna go, controversial as it sounds. Right now, I'm gonna stick with Sam, Tatum, and Allison.
But let's just say, okay, for real though, here's the difference between Sam and Tatum. It's Sam going up to Dewey's trailer, "I'm Billy Loomis's daughter," versus Tatum. It's symbolically communicated to us that she's shy and timid because she's wearing a dog costume in the play. We learn that Tatum doesn't understand things about Sydney's past because she wears a leather jacket. Versus Sam, "I found the diaries," okay? The writing, even we did praise the writing for Sam. I do think that the writing is good for her in Scream 5 in terms of like making her an empathetic lead. But there is an element of like tell, not show, versus Tatum is all show, not tell. And I just think it's so much more naturally developed. And I know what Amar is going to say. He's going to say, well, Ryan, we haven't had 2 movies with Tatum yet. So, Amar, thoughts?
Well, Ryan, we haven't had 2 movies with Tatum yet, so we don't know. No, look, listen, I agree with what you're saying. I don't say that. I've never said that Sam is this perfect character or that Melissa is like the best actress in the world. But what I've come to realize is, especially with Sam, is from the jump from 5 to 6, I understand why the character is the way it is. Because you say girl boss, and I assume that that's just one of those bossy women that doesn't listen to anybody else and, is there at the forefront. And I can see why she is like that. I really can. I understand, based on her past and everything. And I guess, if Kevin Williamson was writing the character of Sam, it would have been so different. Right? Yeah. It really would have been, because he just knows how to write these characters. He's done it all with Gail before. He's done it with Sydney and Tatum even in the original, and he's done it with so many other characters. Sam is written by the wrong people, but I still think that there are elements of that character that I can sympathize with, I guess, or empathize with at least, to understand why she is the way she is, especially in 6. Going from 5 to 6, I understand those traits. I don't agree with them, but I get why she is. So this is the only reason. If Scream 8 and, Tatum is the character that I hope that they're going to make her into, then I can see already that she would jump to the top of that list. I can, but at this moment in time, I have to give it to Sam. That's just the way I feel.
Yeah. I think when we say girl boss, we're kind of saying it in like a condescending way for movies that kind of like portray certain female characters in a 2-dimensional, like strong, like, ooh, I'm like, the modern day version of like a badass bitch, kind of a thing, as opposed to Tatum, who she is a badass bitch, but we see her grow into that badass bitch, step by step. That's how I understand it.
Okay.
So, Amar, a good example of a girl boss is Rey Skywalker.
Right. Okay.
Well,
yeah.
Or Mary Sue, for lack of a better phrase, like the joke. Yeah.
Well, yeah, everybody in England especially, we call Ray Mary Sue because she just seems to be able to do anything, you know.
And that's what we're talking about. This element of like Superwoman, like out of the blue. Like Tatum is so not Superwoman. She is the opposite of Superwoman. She's so vulnerable. And within that vulnerability, she still manages to outsmart the killer to a point, you know, and survive on her own.
But in Sam's defense, you know, she has completely a different life. You know, at the age of 16, she's on the streets, she's done the drugs, she's feisty, she's learning to stick up for herself. She realizes who her father is. She understands why that's not a good thing. So, you know, I'm not saying that she's Superwoman, but she's obviously got the edge. In a fist fight, you know, she would give Sydney a run for her money. I believe that.
Well, I mean, but Sam's kind of crazy too. I mean, like literally.
Well, she is crazy, of course. And I think this is where Scream got it wrong because, you know, the final girl is usually the girl that turns into a Superwoman and has this, you know, vulnerability, this arc, this character that's likable. And I understand that Sam isn't likable from the offset because she is gobby and she is, you know, matter of fact and stuff. But it's real. So I probably think that's why I liked the fact that Sam was nothing like Sydney. If she was the same as Sydney Prescott, we would have complained about that too. Oh, well, she's not her own character. They're just copying, you know, the original. So
yeah. Well, okay, guys, let's move on to Gail because, you know, Tarick is a huge Gail Weathers fan, a huge Courtney Cox fan. So Tarick, tell me about Gail and Scream 7 compared to Scream 6.
I sighed so hard at the end of the movie, Scream 7, of relief of how they did my girl the best way possible. Like, compared to 6, I left Scream 6 so mad, confused, and disappointed, especially how they did Gail. 7, all right, so I've seen Scream 7 5 times in theaters, and every time, whether it was a big audience or a small audience, people cheered, applauded, clapped during her grand entrance, and I love that.
It totally, and like it's like the perfect way to bring her back. I never really thought about like how she would first show up, but the fact that the first time we see her, it is this standing ovation, kapow moment that it's like such a sign of inspiration. It's like, hey, we know that some of you were disappointed last time, but we got you. You know what I mean?
They heard us complaining for the past 3 years about how they treated Gail, so they made up for it in the first second. She came back on screen.
Exactly. Well, so, you know, the thing about Gail in Scream 7 versus 6 that I think is done so well is like, in Scream 6, they give her the action moment, right? So they give her the big phone call, the set piece, but they get her, besides that, they basically give her nothing else. And here they give her everything that was lacking in Scream 6. They give her the emotion, the looking backwards, like the introspection of the consequences of her past actions, meaning like the consequences of Scream 6 and like her injuries there. We see some serious deep drama with her. We get the comedy gold back of Gail Weathers. We get the career woman. We get to see her in her element. We actually get to see her being a journalist, but we also get to see her grow. And part of her growth, I think, is kind of bringing the Meeks on board. I feel like, you know, that's kind of a big step for her, you know, but I also think like it's the fact that we get to find out that her show is canceled. We see the warts on Gail. It's not just even the physical scars. It's everything that's going, there have been some serious dire consequences to her. So Tarick, any thoughts?
Yes, and I'd like to add with Gail, she has an arc in this movie, unlike in 6. In 6, she just there, like I said, just to be a stock character from Scream 1. She got the phone call, the big and best set piece in the movie. In 7, the very first scene we got of her was saving Sydney, her family, and just their little interaction before discussing the killer. To me, I don't see foes, allies, or friends. I see sisters. And then during the interview, Gail was hurt when she said, when Sydney said that Tatum was the last friend she trusted. Like, you see in her face. But Gail, she's a professional, so she just move on to the next question. And then she finally get the acceptance at the end. Like, yes, Gail, I do trust you. You are my friend.
Yeah.
That, I love that for Gail and Sydney.
Well, and it's because it's not only about Gail herself. I mean, it is, but also it's the relationship with Sydney and Gail that gets so much attention throughout, you know. I love that we get to see Gail actually hurt. I think that's one thing about like Gail in Scream 6 that just doesn't work is like, you know, as Sam is mean to her, we never really see Gail actually feel it. You know what I mean? Like she does the Sydney moment of Sydney saying that. So I think that that's really great observations. And the arc is something so sorely missed, from Scream 6, where it's like there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, So I think that you summed it up really well. And like the biggest crime of all of 6 was her not being in the end. And here she gets the best inclusion as being a part of the ending. Like this, there could have been a version of Scream 7 where it was just Sydney and Tatum walking away arm in arm. And I love that Kevin didn't go for that he gave us Gale, because Gale, in my opinion, is so important to the movie. The movie is basically, Sydney at the top of the triangle, and then you have Tatum over here and Gale over here, forming like, that's the holy trinity of Scream 7. Tarick, any follow-up before we go to Amar?
Another thing about Gale in 7, she is the perfect combination of 4 and 5, mostly 4, with her sassiness, her one-liners, and then with 5, her emotional scenes with Sydney. To me, that's the perfect combo of Gale for now, 4 and 5, but mostly 4 and bits of 5.
I want to ask you a question. So, as a Scream 2 person, and I'm assuming as a Gale and Scream 2 person, how do you reconcile that, in terms of like the Gale of now, the Gale of today? You just said the perfect combination of her is kind of like a, maybe like 2/3 Scream 4 and 1/3 Scream 5, which I agree with you, by the way. But how do you match that up with Gale and Scream 2 being the best? Because I think some people desperately want to get back to the Gale and Scream 2. And in my opinion, I don't see how you can get her back there without being bad like Scream 6 was. I think that this is who Gale Weathers is. For the past 15 years, like this is who the woman is. And I think that this is who she's going to be unless if something drastic happens.
Yeah, so when it comes to Scream 2 as why that's my favorite Gale, because she goes through an entire arc in that movie. And you can only do that one time. So you can't do it now. So that's what I'm saying. Scream 2 is my favorite because of her arc. She went from want to get the story to now she doesn't care. She just want to find the killer. After seeing Randy's death, so of course, you can't go back from that. I mean, 6 tried that, but it flopped. So.
Yeah, so my biggest gripe with Scream 6 is that Gale has gone back. If you look at the evolution of Gale Weathers from 1 to 5, there's always progression. And like Tarick said, you can't go back to Scream 2 Gale because she's past that now. That, cutthroat Gale Weathers is gone, especially with Randy's death. So the emotions kicked in. She's realized, wow, shit, this could have been me. And it's changed. And Scream 6 kind of goes back and betrays the flow of Gale Weathers. It felt so unnatural. It's like taking 3 steps backwards. So it didn't feel real to who Gale Weathers would have been in that moment. I just don't understand what they were going for in that one. With Scream 7, what I think that they've done better is that they've given her more emotional weight, first of all. And I like the fact that she reflects on her past and, everything that's happened to her right up until now. And it makes it feel more grounded, more real. And in this one, I think that with this one, I've used the word grounded as well, but she seems more human and less reportery. That's not a word, but I'm just going to use it in this term because, yes, she wants to get that interview, and I get that, but there's an agenda there as well. And you said that, in 6, Gale was never really hurt by Sam. And to be honest with you, it kind of fits because, realistically, does Gale care about Sam? No. Does she care about Sydney? Of course she does. Sydney and her have been through this journey, so that one really stings. And I like that they focus on her legacy and her personal stakes, rather than just being a plot function, which is clearly what she was in part 6. And so yeah, I just think that they've managed to go back to who Gale was, and in a natural, organic way. This is who Gale Weathers would be in this moment. So yeah, I think Kevin's obviously gone back and looked at it, and he clearly realizes that this is who Gale is, and let's write her correctly, and they've done it. And I think you said it, I like the fact that she's still got that comedic timing, and she's still sassy because that's Gale Weathers, but at the same time, she's very much just grounded in being a human. And it shows when she turns up. Realistically, yeah, of course, she brings Mindy and Chad with her because that's just something she is. She's always been a reporter. But realistically, why is she there? She's there for Sidney Prescott,
right?
Because that house burnt down. She could have run there, but she didn't. She goes, let's go to Pine Grove and find out how our girl Sydney is doing. And in the way, she just kills Ghostface. So kudos, bonus points there.
Well, and another way that Scream 7 Gale is better than Scream 6 Gale is the mystery. Like the idea that we get to actually see Gale snooping around, like going to the mental hospital, investigating, that is so key, as opposed to in 6 where the shrine just magically appears and Gale finds it off screen. I think actually showing Gale in her element, being Gale Weathers, not only as a reporter, as an investigator, as someone who has been a survivor with Sidney Prescott for 30 years, like actually getting to see Mindy and spend time with her in all these situations. That was the key that made Gale Weathers really successful in Scream 7 compared to Scream 6. Someone back in like the Scream 6 days, they said, it was like on episode 99, I think I remember, one of my friends said, if Gale is alive, if we're having Gale in the movie, I want to see her. And I feel like Scream 7 like took that to heart. It's like, we got to see her. We actually got to spend time with her.
Yeah, no, yeah, perfectly. You've put it right. And I think the key word here is depth. We got a lot more depth with Gale in Scream 7 that we just did not get in Scream 6, so, And no shade to anyone that loves her in that, because the set piece is fantastic. But you can't have a Scream film and not have Gale at the end in some way or form, even if they'd gone to the hospital for the moment, But yeah. We didn't get that, I guess.
Tarick, any thoughts about Gale Weathers before we move on to the Meeks?
She is the MVP of the film for me in terms of legacy characters.
Okay, even more than Sydney.
I love Gale.
Listen, I feel it because like even though like my experience of Scream 7 that weekend was like everyone was praising Sydney and I thought Sydney was perfect and flawless and wonderful, yet I was more excited about Gale because I wasn't convinced that they would pull it off, and Scream 7 did pull it off, and in my opinion they're equal. I think that they're both like so good. I don't know where my Gale ranking is. That's going to be another episode for another time. She would be near the top if not the top in this movie. So good. All right, the twins. So Tarick, please take it away. What did you think of the twins in Scream 7 versus Scream 6?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but for someone who used to not care for Mindy, like if she dies, I'm like, okay, anyway. But now I'm a Mindy fan.
Yeah.
She was amazing in 7. Like she actually feels like a real person, not a Randy Egerton or Randy 2.0 or Kirby 2.0. No, I was saying 7. She feels more like Gale, if anything, like a modern version, true crime version of Gale. Not about writing, but more about reporting real crime.
And like the energy and like the drive career-wise, like that's definitely present from Gale to Mindy, I think.
And then with Chad went from the likable jaw character in 5 to the heart rock in 6 to now, I would say he feels more like the new version of Joel, and also a bit of Dewey in there too.
And now that you say that about Dewey, like I know back with Scream 6, everyone was saying, "Oh my God, he's the new Dewey because he keeps, getting attacked and then pulled out on the stretcher." I think that he's more Dewey here because the banter that he and Mindy have is very Dewey and Gale, circa Scream 2, Scream 3. The way that they always kind of bickered. Yeah. I know it's like brother and sister versus a couple, but the banter, the bickering, like that's really important to Scream. And I think that's something that they had Dewey and Gale, and it's now something that Chad and Mindy kind of represent.
Yes, I agree. And I was rewatching the deleted scenes, and I wish they kept 2 of them with Chad and Mindy, where Chad was trying to stop Ben from going with Tatum because Chad doesn't trust Ben. Of course, he's the new Dewey. He wants to protect Tatum. And then the scene with Chad and Mindy after the attack scene, the bar attack scene, with them laying in the kitchen, where they were like, okay, yeah, this was a bad idea. Yeah, no shit. Like, why bring the suspects in the same room where they can kill you? Luckily for you, none of them were the killers this time, but still.
Well, so Tarick, I want to ask, like, why do you think it is that Mindy felt so much better in Scream 7 versus Scream 6? Because a lot of people in Scream 6 found her to be shrill, to be generic, to be cringe, to just be out of touch, for her to be annoying. And here, I don't think that any of those things represent who Mindy is. I find her to be charming and likable and funny and actually funny, not the forced way that Scream 6 presented her. So what do you think it is?
Like you said, she doesn't feel forced in this movie compared to 5 and especially 6. Here, I feel like since Kevin mentioned he loves Mindy, he must have at least took some part in the writing for her, or in the direction. Like if you love a character, you gotta make sure this character is the best version in your own movie. So he did that.
I think that like what it is, and I'm going to go to Amar next, is like, I think with Mindy, it's a combination of things. I think it's having the right person to bounce off of with Chad, and bringing out the best in her, but then also giving her real purpose with the fact that she works for Gale and she has this specific ambition. And like there's a confidence that Mindy has here that makes her more charming when she does her thing. And there's almost like a knowing that she's in on the joke, you know what I mean? Versus before, I don't think Mindy was actually in on the joke. She was, trying to be clever. But here, even like the way that she talks to like the Agatha Christie, and she like scooches towards Tatum on the couch, and like of course, the epic moment with the speech where she starts the speech, Chad tells her to stop, and she just can't stop. It's so funny. And like, I just think things like that, in addition to the career ambition, like the and how vulnerable she is, with being a reporter, and how she isn't perfect right off the bat. Like, as the end credits roll, we see that montage of her trying and failing, and I think that humanizes her to a point. And the fact that Gail slaps her down, like she's not just the Mindy who's running around college saying "you're the killer," or I don't know. Amar, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, okay, so Mindy took a while to grow on me as far more than you guys, because, I mean, to be honest with you, I've never really been a huge Mindy fan, neither in 5 nor in 6. But what I will say is that in Scream 7, they try to push her beyond just like a rules expert. And I think that was the flaw of especially 6, the whole scene in the college campus area. It was just, like you said, shrill. And it really got on my nerves, and I was just like, shut up for once, And I think the whole thing with her and Jack Champion's character, that part just, it wasn't as funny as they tried to portray it to be. So I think that's the problem. And the word that you used, and I wrote this down, was that we see a lot more vulnerability from Mindy, and I think that's where people are starting to really relate to her and like her so much, because before she was just, trying to be smart, I guess. She seemed... I guess she was aware of the danger in 5 and 6, but she seems more aware now, and I think that's just because she's grown and she's matured a little bit. Obviously, there's that banter with her brother and her, so I like that she is a real character. Not just someone who is unfortunately an iteration of Randy, or Randy 2.0, as you said. So yeah, I must admit that her humor is laugh out loud. It's not forced in this one. So she's grown on me loads, and she looks absolutely fantastic. She's still got the essence of Mindy, I guess, but it's not over the top where you just want to tell her to, sit down, and Chad does that anyway. So the banter between the twins is fantastic. This is the one where I disagree. I think Chad in Scream 6 was fantastic. He is such an improvement over Scream 5. I just feel like, there's moments in this one where we do see the bit of Dewey in him, and he is a bit held back a little bit, but I just find that Scream 6 gave him more to do. I get it that you said once that he's like this jock character who's, just big and love interest for Tara, but I just felt like he had more to do. And they dialed it down a little bit. I don't know if that was to do with the fact that I think you said that Mason had an illness or something. I'm not sure. But so if these twins are going to be in Scream 8, I think Chad should be given a bit more to do.
And I think that that's right. I think that, I like Chad in Scream 7, and I think that he resembles more of a team player, and he kind of takes a backseat to Mindy in Scream 7. But for me, it works. It works in a way that I see him being a team player along with her. And I think you can't just have one person for the banter. It goes back and forth. And I think it's just, I would agree that there is more opportunity for him in Scream 6, and he's great in Scream 6. I think here we get to see a little bit more of his personality outside of just like the boxes of like cheerleader and love interest. Here we get to see him kind of being useful and being smart. Like he's looking on the iPad at the camera footage and stuff. And like he's kind of helping Mindy this time. Instead of always being resistant to her, he's helping suss out the suspects at the bar. And I think also having them, I think the key to Scream 7 and why they're so good is like, and why the partnership with Gail is so good compared to 6 is having them not be a part of the friend group allows them to then point the finger at everybody and talk about them in like a two-dimensional way. To talk about Chloe as the cute girl, to talk about Lucas as the creepy guy, to talk about Ben as the Gen Z Billy Loomis. Like they're able to say those things without it seeming cold or not fair or to people in their lives. So Tarick, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I agree. They do feel, for me, the Carpenter sisters, they held them back, the twins back, because we too focus on their sibling thematic versus Chad and Mindy's. Here we got maybe the best version of the sibling thematic. I might prefer Chad and Mindy over Sam and Tara with their sibling relationship.
Ooh, that's interesting. I mean, that's a good question. Amar is going to pick Sam and
It's
Tara.
more fun to watch.
Yeah.
No, of course I'm going to pick Sam and Tara. I mean, look, listen, I think it's quite unfair because you have to understand that Sam and Tara were the focal point of 5 and 6. So the twins were always going to take a backseat regardless. And I think that because those two are not there, obviously the light and the camera shines on them and we get to see that banter. And you're right, being part of that friend group kind of pushes them into the background. But I don't think that's the flaw. I just think that the sole focus, sorry, there we go, tongue twister, was the Carpenter sisters. So with them out of the way as such, or not in the picture, we get to see more of that banter because they were always part of the friend group. It was hardly ever just the two. If you look at Scream 5, Liv was always in the way, so good job she got shot. Right, there we go, Ryan. I brought a smile to your face. But, you see my point?
I do.
And I get what you're saying, obviously with these two, and there's so many opportunities, and even though they're hardly in the film, there are so many opportunities where Gail isn't even there. It's just those two, and that's the twin, the siblings bouncing off each other as twins should be.
Mm-hmm.
So it is cute and it is funny and it's nice to see. I always feel that in that relationship, Mindy is the one that's the feisty one of the two anyway, and we get to see that in this.
Well, I think Amar hit the nail on the head with the idea of just getting to run their own storyline, because they never really got to do that. I mean, Mindy got the couch in Scream 5. Okay, sure. But in Scream 6, they were always beholden under Sam. Sam was making the decisions. Sam was steering the ship. And taking that out of the picture and taking that out of the formula, they get to be the ones who are making the choices to go with Tatum to the bar and help Tatum here and to how should they get out of the bar and blah, blah, blah. And therein lies their humanity coming out and our affection for them as characters coming out better than I think just squishing them to be sidekicks to Sam and Tara, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just like to compare Chad and Mindy in 7 to Tatum and Dewey with their banter in terms of they both 1 and 7 did the whole sibling banter really good, but of course Tatum, well not Tatum, but Dewey's not part of the friend group with Tatum, Sydney, Sue, and Billy. So when compared to 7, Mindy and Chad, they're not part of the friend group, but also you see their banter, they're interacting with the friend group because you can't compare the original to 7 with the sibling dramatics. And then with 6, yes, you're right. 6 and 5 were Sam and Tara movies, but at the same time, I didn't get that close sibling relationship with Mindy and Chad in those movies until we got 7.
Right. No, I think I love that comparison. That is very much the banter dynamic. Tatum and Dewey in Scream 1 is them. I love that. So good, but different because it's still their unique, specific, personalities. So very cool observation, Tarick. So do we want to say anything else here about any of the characters that we've talked about or any of the concepts going from 6 to 7 in terms of how did Scream 7 do it better than Scream 6? Amar, any final thoughts?
Just the writing. The writing is just so much better. I was speaking to someone the other day and he'd just seen Scream 7 for the first time. He's only seen it once. And he came to me and he's my age and he's like, yeah, I didn't like Scream 7. I didn't understand it. The motive wasn't really good. And, Sydney wasn't great. And Gail shouldn't have been there and all of this. And I said, look, go back, watch it again. Watch it a couple of times and appreciate the film. And even he enjoys 6, but even he said, yeah, the writing there's just something about it that isn't, just so off. And I said, yeah, you're right. So I think that's the key thing here. Despite all the direction and everything and the characters and the way they move forward, it's all about the writing. When you've got a good writing team, then, it just makes everything 10 times better.
Tarick, how about you?
So not just the characters we talked about, but just all the characters in general and 7 were written better than 5 and 6. We know more about Ben, Hannah, Chloe, and Lucas than we ever did with Annika, Danny, Liv, and Wes. Because we know that Hannah, she's into acting. She wants to be a famous actress. She pretends to be a diva for show. She also watches stab movies. With Ben, he's into computer science. Enter Hero into some computer college. He's also into stab movies. He's also into drama. He controls the lighting board. Lucas, he loves horror films. Sidney Prescott, he's also into drama, controlling the sound of the lighting board. And then with Annika, we just know that she's with Mindy. Annie, he lives in New York and drinks beer. If she has pink hair, and like stab 8. And then Wes, he's the son of Judy.
You know what, Tarick? I love your defense of the Scream 7 supporting roles. And again, all of that stuff that we learn about them is subtle and implicit, and it's along for the ride in this very lean machine that Kevin makes up. And it's, you know what? I'm a believer. I like it. Amar, any response to Tarick there?
I was thinking of one, but I'm just going to let you guys have this one because I can't really come back with anything. I mean, realistically, what more do we know about Wes except that he's Judy's son and likes sushi? Yeah.
He's also very conspiratorial about like the government and stuff.
He is, but I have to give it to you. I mean,
but everything else, Tarick is completely right.
Yeah. I don't agree with Hannah. I mean, she needed more time. Listen, that
she
girl
did.
needed. Yeah,
she was the Cece kill in the movie.
Yeah, but at least Cece had a conversation with someone about some TV show before she got killed off. We knew that she was into that, and Cece had this epic, full scene. McKenna agrees. Again, when you've got such a great actress who, honestly, I think she can act anyone under the table. She's that good. I just felt that she needed a bit more. That's all.
That's fair.
Yeah, she's just in everything, so her schedule is tight.
Exactly.
True.
So Tarick, just to round out the episode, you kind of proposed this idea to me earlier in our conversation off air about how 7 kind of pays homage to Scream 2. Do you want to run through your idea there?
Yes. So we all thought Scream 6 was the love letter for 2. For me, Scream 6 was the love letter for the 5 films before it. But 7 was more of a love letter to 2. With the opening. I'm not sure if you guys noticed with the opening in Scream 7, but it pays a huge homage to 2. With it being about a couple who goes to a stab-related event. The boyfriend is hyped for it, the girlfriend is indifferent. The boyfriend needs to use the bathroom, he pranks and kills the girlfriend with the Ghostface mask or costume. He's willing to leave for her, but she doesn't mind staying. She mistakes Ghostface and Danny for someone else. In Scream 2, she thought Ghostface was Phil. And then Scream 7, Madison thought Scott was Ghostface. So I thought that's a nice, switch around. And then the boyfriend's death involved getting stabbed in the head. With what's his name again? It was Phil, right?
Phil, yeah.
Yeah, he got stabbed through the head, through the ear. And then with Scott, he got stabbed through the temple, the forehead, through his eyes. And then, of course, Scream 7 is the first Scream movie since Scream 2 where we don't cut to the title screen after Ghostface flashes screen. We see Ghostface shadow entering the camera. So I thought Scream 7's opening was a great, modern, but different version of Scream 2's.
Yeah, that's really brilliant.
Yeah, and also both Scream 2 and 7 and Mom is the mastermind Ghostface. Hannah's kill pays homage to Derek's kill in theater, and they both have a musical number in the movie. Let me ask you guys, with Hannah's kill, I always thought it was an homage to Casey Becker's, with both being blondes, hanging with the guts out. But I would say for Sydney, it was more so a reminder of what happened to Tatum, and also seeing that again for the first time in 30 years, where she thought that could be her daughter. So I thought it was like a rather full circle moment for Sydney going through that again, seeing a blonde dead hanging.
Just like she saw Tatum, right? Because I mean, we actually need to sit on that moment sometime in the future. The idea that Sydney literally saw her best friend hanging there in Scream 1, and now here we are in Scream 7. That's the whole reason for the season. So I love that, Tarick.
Yeah, and also both Carl and Mickey were serial killers before becoming Ghostface. You can say the Evans residence invasion was pretty much an homage to the car sequence of Scream 2, where Sydney and someone close to her gets attacked in a claustrophobic setting, and then someone dies in a car-related accident. In Scream 2, it was a detective who got impaled to the head or the eye, as Haley said. And then with Scream 7, it was actually Ghostface himself getting run over.
Love it.
What else happened? Sydney and Tatum both lost their boyfriends who were innocent and all their friends in 2 and 7.
Yeah.
Sydney was saved by someone else during her confrontation with the main Ghostface by shooting them dead.
Yeah.
And Scream 2, seeing Gail work together and shoot a Ghostface dead. And then 7, it was Tatum and Sydney shooting Jessica dead in the face. And of course, both movies end with the final girl or final girls walking outside.
All right. I love that. And I mean, you could count Dewey and Mark both being taken off in the ambulance together.
Hmm.
I like that. All these are great comparisons. And obviously, there is the leather jacket of it all. I mean, that is like the
Yes.
ultimate like Scream 2 moment, sign of love and affection that this movie has for that film. Amar, any thoughts on Tariq's list here as it pertains to overlapping of Scream 2 and Scream 7?
I think the entire list is fantastic, but my mind was blown with the opening. I didn't realize how many homages it pays. And when you started listing them, Tariq, my eyes were just getting wide. I was like, wow, how have I missed all of that? And it's so obvious, right? Everything about Maureen and Phil in comparison to these two. And I was just like, yeah, it literally is like the homage to Scream 2. And just for the record, my ranking, Scream 1 and 2 always switch. I push Scream 2 so hard because it's that good. So I hear you.
Well, the thing that blew my mind was the musical numbers, like kaboom. I didn't even realize that. You're right. Like we see the play in Scream 2, we see Cassandra, and then of course we see Hannah's singing and dancing and up in the air, and Tatum fumbles it. I loved that. Oh my God. But the thing about this list, because Tariq, you probably have a good 20 things here, in the last 10 minutes that you just kind of ran through all of these comparisons between Scream 2 and Scream 7. Yet none of these feel like Easter eggs or feel like, fan service in a way. It's all just gentle reminders or, just certain brush strokes that are supposed to make us recall or that are hidden deep in there. Like Amar, he's praised the opening, to the hills and back on this, yet he didn't make the connection. So I love everything that you said. And again, this is how you do good Easter eggs and good references and good homages. Like this is how I feel like Wes, if Wes were here and he was making this movie and he wanted to make references to Scream 2, he would do it in the way that it was done here, if that makes sense.
Yes, and also another thing I want to point out is that this movie, as a huge Halloween fan, this movie feels the most, as you would call it, the most like slasher of the franchise, and also the most Halloween in the franchise. The atmosphere, the fall vibes screams Halloween for me. It takes place in November, but still. So the way Ghostface moves in this movie, the way he stalks, how he always got watch out in the background when you're watching the movie. You can see Ghostface stalking Tatum in the costume room. I didn't notice that until my third viewing of the movie.
I love the fact that it is such a slasher focused film, a slasher forward film. It's almost like a throwback. Like, I've talked about it, like the comparisons to like the 70s and like what Kevin was going for, but I feel like Kevin does capture that, I don't want to say generic, but like that version of the slasher we have in our mind. You know what I mean? He brings a lot of that to this movie. And maybe that's why some critics didn't like it in addition to whatever else. But I think it's a huge asset to Scream 7. It really identifies what the genre is. Amar, any thoughts you want to add here as we finish up?
I just want to mention that scene that Tariq was talking about, with Ghostface when he comes behind Tatum. It's really strange because I saw the film in the cinema 4 times. And the first time I saw it, I noticed him. And I don't know why, but the other 3 times, maybe because I was concentrating on Tatum so much, it happened so quickly. I was like, oh, wasn't Ghostface supposed to pop up here? But it's done so subtly. And what I want to say is what Ryan said. It's true. Scream 7 pays homage in such a subtle way. It's not in your face Easter egg like. It's just done, well, like you said, I've seen that opening so many times. I've seen the opening separately, like just separate. I've not even seen the full film through just because I like the opening, and not once did I think this is Scream 2.
Yeah. And
So
that's the beauty of art. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And one more thing I want to add in, how Sydney got her first Michael Myers Ghostface, with Carl being a mental patient escapee who doesn't share a single connection with her, tries to kill her the very same day, and then pretty much gets saved by someone else. With Halloween, it was Dr. Loomis, then with Scream 7, it was Gail.
Chef's fucking kiss, Tariq. That is a beautiful way to end this episode because it's so true. How we didn't notice that Kevin Williamson was giving us a version of Sydney and Laurie, through this is bonkers to me. That's exactly what it is. Amar, do you have any thoughts about that? Oh my God.
No, well, yeah. Again, I was thinking, wow, how did I not spot that? And I love the fact that Carl, like Michael Myers, doesn't have a single word in the film. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tariq, that was like such a great observation. I love that so much. Oh my gosh.
I gotta say, man, the more I watch Scream 7, the more things I notice, and it's such a good movie. I don't get the critics or the hate for this movie, and just to be part of the bandwagon.
Yeah, exactly. Tarick, thank you so much for coming tonight and joining us and having this episode. I thought it was a really nice discussion, and many times tonight you've just kind of like blown my mind. So love it.
I gotta say, I'm a Scream fan. I'm a Scream 7 defender. I love this movie so much.
Tarick, please tell everybody where they can find you online.
So find me on Twitter at _Evans Tarick, and then on Instagram, TP Evans _.
Awesome. Thank you, Tarick. Thank you, Amar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I'm sitting here with my good friend, Hoodie, Roy Garza. It's so funny. Whenever I go to text Hoodie, I go for the H, and I don't have it. I don't have it in the H. I have it as Roy. So, Roy/Hoodie, what's up?
Nothing much. Happy to be here. It's been a long time since we got together and recorded, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy too. I'm happy to be doing it one-on-one, especially because you've had quite a journey with Scream 7.
Yeah, it was.
Well, so let's talk about it. So tell me about when you first saw the movie. What was your reaction like the first time out the gate, and like how you started to slowly evolve?
I think the first reaction was one, like the movie theater experience. I guess the people I watched it with, nobody was really into it, I guess you can say. But it was
Really?
just, yeah, like not Mike, the people I brought with me, not them, like the people around us. Like the second viewing, like you had people clap when Gail showed up. Whenever something happened, people were like, would get happy. And then the first one is like, that wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, my first initial, like whenever we first see Tatum and then her boyfriend comes to the window, he does like the same thing that Billy does with his fingers. I'm like, really? Like at first, I guess I was just like, why are we doing the same thing? And then I guess at first, the killer reveal, I didn't like it because the two of them were never hardly in the movie, but I already knew Jessica was the killer. So I was just like, she really killed her son, which is wild being a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's just, I had my expectations too high, which I didn't think I did. So when
Yeah.
I came out of it, I was like, I don't know how I really feel about it. But then like the second viewing and on, I'm like, I looked at it way too hard. Like this is actually a really, really good movie when you sit down and actually pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah. Well, so so you think it was a combination of expectations and the audience participation for the first viewing?
Yeah, because I think also me knowing like all three killers after the first viewing and then going in and watching, it's like it made the movie so much better, which it was crazy because I know in 6 and 7, I didn't want to know anything. Like I wanted to go in knowing nothing. In those movies, like I don't know, it felt like if I would have got spoiled with this one, it would have been a better experience off rip.
Okay, well, next time I'll tell you. But I specifically remember you not wanting spoilers.
Well, see, I asked you about Jessica because I just had to know. Because when she got casted, we all knew that, okay, she's the killer. There's no way she's not the killer.
So were you surprised by the other two killers?
Surprised in the sense that I wish they were in it more. And like, I feel like they should have been in it more. But
Yeah.
like, I called it. I told my wife, I think I have like voice recordings of me and her saying, I think there's going to be 3, but I think one's going to die early on. And that's kind of what happened. I didn't think it was going to be like a no-name was what it was. I just had a feeling that we were going to get a killer that died halfway through the movie.
Well, so I just want to ask you now, like, where do you stand with Scream 7 now? All those points that you made earlier, it sounds like a lot of your beef kind of came from the motive, the killers. Did it come from the pace, or was it just the killers?
It was mainly just the other two killers at the beginning of it. Because when you go back and look at Jessica's motive, it makes sense. Like she was psycho and she plays that role really well. And the pacing, because to me, the movie felt like it was, I did not feel like I was in the movie theater for 2 hours. I felt like I was only in there for a little bit. Because like the minute the first killing happened, it just rolls on from there. That's why I feel like the ending, it felt so like, I guess lackluster in a sense. I don't know if that's the right wording because it was just so fast paced.
Yeah. Well, Hoodie, why don't you share with everybody what was your first ranking that you shared with me whenever you when you came out of the theater, and what your ranking is now that the dust has settled?
So it was before when I came out the movie theater and sent it to you. It was 3, 1, 2, 4, 7, 5. No, 5, 7, 6.
1, 2. So I'm sorry. Who cares about Scream 7 right now? Like, you have not been like the kindest to Scream 2 over the years. I mean, not. You haven't been mean, but you haven't always been like Team Scream 2. So that's interesting that you had it up that high.
Yeah, because I remember telling you, I forgot which episode it was on, that you made me appreciate Scream 2 a lot more. Because I was the type of person like, it's too slow. There's nothing going on. But when you actually sit there and watch it and really look at it, it's like it's one of the best movies in the franchise.
Yeah.
So like that 2 before was like behind 4, like way down there. But then recently it's always been up there. But when I give you my new ranking, my new ranking is the same as Ryan's. It's 371, 4256.
I love that 7 has caught up so high. It's crazy to think that it was so low, second to bottom, and now it's, up there, right? Second to top. So that's crazy.
Yeah, it went from second to last to second to top. Yeah, it is. But I think it's just, I guess I'm watching that movie through a parent's point of view. I guess that's why to me it's just such a better movie.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Why don't you tell me about that from a parent's point of view?
Because I can see, like, forgot who exactly was on the podcast. I think it was Amar and them. They were talking. Like, to me, you don't, as a parent, like, everybody goes through stuff when they're growing up. And then when you end up having kids, if you've gone through a lot, you don't want your kids to go through that. So you don't want to, like, tell them anything about your past. So that way they avoid it. But, history usually tends to repeat itself. And then your kids end up going through what you're trying to avoid them from going through. So with this movie, you can see Sydney's, like, not helicopter parenting because we don't know what happened, like, beforehand. But you can just see she doesn't want to express what she's gone through because she doesn't want it for Tatum, which in the end, it comes back and kind of, like, haunts her.
Right.
Like, her biggest fear comes to life.
Well, so, I want to ask you about Sydney in Scream 7. What are your thoughts on Sydney? I mean, I know you talked about it a little bit from a parent's perspective, but what are your thoughts on the character and what we see of her?
I think this is what I wanted to see out of Sydney as a parent. Like, because we all were speculating coming up to, like, how would she be? Would she be the Lori where she just goes crazy, or would she actually open up and tell Tatum everything? That way she would know what to do. And she actually, to me, she seemed like a real life, like, that's what would actually happen. So, I mean, I think she was amazing in this movie. She's right up there with 3. I don't think anything will top the way she is in 3, but this is, like, up there.
I feel like I'm looking in the mirror. That's whenever, with these, it's like question and answer. I love to hear it. So what was your favorite moment of Sydney in the film?
I think it's when she's on the phone with Tatum when she's in the coffee shop, because you can see, like, the acting from her. Like, she has a kid in real life, so she can pull that out. But it's just the thought of knowing that you can't physically be there to help your daughter, but you have to walk her through these steps because you didn't, not train her, but didn't, like, help her, go through if this was to happen. So you having to then talk to your daughter through this that's never shot a gun or held a gun. It's just, to me, that was, like, one of her best moments because you have to then, like, put your fears aside and help your daughter through this.
Right. Well, I love that scene. I think it's great for both of them, for both Sydney and for Tatum. For Tatum, I feel like, a lot of times with, like, final girls and, like, characters in these movies, it's a journey. It's never always just, like, one big moment. It's like, it's a glacial pace from start to finish. Yet with Tatum, I feel like who she becomes is so defined in that scene. Yeah. Like, it's like a microcosm of her overall, where she kind of starts and where she ends up. So one thing about Tatum, because, like, I know you love Tatum and I want to talk about her, in depth here, but she's very, she comes off as shy, right? She would call herself shy, or she asks, am I shy? Her teacher kind of puts her down as, like, this, as Sidney Prescott's daughter, who's kind of a wimp, who's kind of meek. And a part of her journey in this movie is kind of breaking out of that mold. But I have to say, I think that she's pretty, for being vulnerable and being quiet and shy, I think she's pretty tough, in certain, or she can turn it on really fast, like, in terms of the way that she, like, smacks Ghostface in the street with the sign, and just how much she's able to stand up for herself once she gets over the fear, you know what I mean? In the coffee shop.
It's there, but she hasn't been taught all the stuff that she needed to be taught. It's like, it's there, but she just didn't know it was. Like, she didn't see herself as Sidney Prescott's daughter.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know. I just love Tatum.
Tell me about Gail Weathers.
Well, I love Gail because she seemed more, I don't know, human, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, because I hate the one, like, especially, like, even Chad, like, when, he gets stabbed all these times, there's no, like, repercussions. So with Gail in this one, you can tell, like, what happened to her in 6 really affects her now. And I love that they did that. Like, I love Kevin wrote her that way. Like, I wasn't expecting her to come back and be like if 6 never happened, in a sense. Like, I'm glad that they actually, you could tell that what happened hurt her.
Well, if I'm being honest, I wanted her to have consequences to her sequence in Scream 6, and I wanted to see physical damage. I thought it would be more of a Dewey thing. With Dewey, we saw him limp, like, once or twice in Scream 2 and Scream 3. The limp is there, right? But it's not overly discussed. It's not overly talked about. I guess he says severed nerve, but, to Randy, but not like this. There is so much emphasis that is put on the consequences of Gail in Scream 6. I guess I wasn't prepared for that, and I'm glad that I wasn't, because it's the impact of the Sydney and Gale storyline as it pertains to Gale's injuries is so emotionally overwhelming.
It really is.
So, well, the one thing I love about Gale in Scream 7 is it just feels like a return to form about everything about the character in terms of the humor, the comedy, but also she's very, very fierce, very mean, to other people, but yet still protective and caring about Sydney and, and very smart. You know what I mean? It's such a cutting edge version of Gale.
Yeah, because you could see like the Scream 1 Gale when she's talking to other people, and then like the evolved Gale when she's around Sydney. It's like the minute we see her, she's like, fuck the fuck off. And when she gets to Sydney, she's like checking to make sure she's okay and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. Well, so what did you think of the twins?
I loved them in this. I don't know why people didn't. Like, my wife's one of the people, she's like, why were they there? I was like, dude, this was the best they were, and they got less screen time in this one. It's just, I don't know, it's like, it made sense because even when they got casted, I'm like, how are they going to make sense in this movie without the other two? And to me, without the other two, it made them better. Like, I don't know. I think every scene that they were in were good.
Every scene that they had, it was effective. Like, there was nothing corny. There was nothing that felt forced about them. I guess like some people would say that the concept of them even being here was forced, which I disagree with. I think people are reaching with that. I don't get it. But even let's just take that out. Let's just say, even if you do feel like they were shoehorned in, which I disagree with, even if you feel that way, just look at them in this movie compared to the other movies. I just feel as though their dialogue is stronger, their chemistry is better with each other, but also with like the Scream world. You know what I mean? I don't cringe at any point. I feel like there's some depth to them. I feel like at least Mindy, we see a change in her and we see a different side of Chad. I think there's a lot going on here that frankly just wasn't going on, to your point about the screen time, that whenever they had double the screen time in Scream 6, there's so much more that's accomplished here than with less time.
And you can see like the whole twin thing really going on in this one. Like I think you said it, they feel like more of the family now. I don't know if that makes, like, they actually fit in more than just like placeholders for Sam and Tara.
Whenever I said that about them fitting in, I think that they fit in with the world of Scream better. Like for me, I'm talking about like, how I view them in terms of Scream. Like with Scream 5 and 6, I like them enough. Mindy and 6 not so much, but like I like them enough, but they never felt like they were on the same level as the trio, or how I feel about the trio, or people who are just so indispensable to Scream. And I think that that's kind of where they kind of came. I'm happy to have them a part of the family now. I feel like this is just like the best version of them, in so many different ways.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, well, what did you think of Mark Kincaid? Not Mark Kincaid. Wow, that was a Freudian slip. What did you think of Mark Evans?
I thought he was amazing. Like, I felt like he complimented Sydney very well. Like, just like he wasn't like the Mark Kincaid. Like, I felt like that wouldn't have worked here.
Yeah.
But like with the part where she gets the call from AI Stu, and then she calls him and is like, "Hey, there's a killer at her school." He doesn't like question her. He's like, "Okay, I'm coming." Like, there's no like, "Are you psycho? Like, are you losing your mind here? This isn't happening." He just like, "Okay, I'm coming." Like, he automatically jumps and goes. Like, he ignores his deputy trying to tell him something, and he leaves.
Right. And do you notice what, no one's brought this up on the podcast yet, but have you noticed what the deputy is trying to say to him?
It was the fact that the house was going to burn down in Woodsboro. Because it was a Woodsboro police department he was trying to tell them.
Right. So we give the credit to Gale because it's so like much more in your face. But this is there too. So I have to say, good on Kevin, and if it was a guy abused, like, right, who did that, who really circled around both directions to try to make the opening more connected to the rest of the film. I think that's really great.
Yeah.
Speaking of the opening, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I loved it. Like, at first I thought I wasn't gonna like it because a lot of it was in the trailers, which a lot of it wasn't in the trailer.
Yeah.
And I loved it because like I have one of the Ghostface like animatronics here, so it's like, oh, that's scary. Like, I wonder if my kids are gonna be scared of it now, like come Halloween, because now they've watched Scream 7 too now. So it's like, yeah. But
wow.
I thought it was a good way of using it because I mean, a lot of people have that now, and I was wondering how Ghostface was gonna appear.
Mm-hmm.
But like now I watched that scene, I'm trying to figure out when the switch happened. Like, I was staring, like I won't even listen to what they're doing. I'm like staring back there. I'm like, is it actually Ghostface now? Like, I don't know.
So when, at what point do you think it turns and goes, it switches?
I think it's whenever he walks off. I think that's when she's getting the phone call. I think it has to be two Ghostfaces, and then I think is when he switches. It's just it's crazy how he doesn't make any noise switching it out.
Who do you think was involved with the opening?
It had to be either Carl or what's the other guy's name?
Marco.
I had to be one of them two because I don't think Jessica would have been over there.
Okay, so let's play a little who killed who. Okay, so I actually have a very clear path for how I think things went. So you think the opening was Marco and Carl, or just one of them?
I think Marco was the one that killed him. I think Carl was on the phone, maybe.
Okay, cool. I think that I would agree with that. I think Marco was definitely in person at the Mocker house. I think Carl or Jessica could have been on the phone. Like maybe Marco texted them and said, hey, call now. And that's whatever he could, swap in there. But I definitely think it was him by himself at the Mocker house, because if you think about it, like that's day one, right? And then day two is the Hannah death and the sequence at Sydney's house and the coffee shop where Carl and Jessica are both at. If you're thinking about California to Indiana, that's a flight, to get there. So I think Marco was in California. I think Carl and Jessica were in Pine Grove, and Marco came, he flew back on day two because he meets Sydney and Gail at the hospital on day 3. So I think that he was, in transit on day 2, and then he didn't get back to town until day 3 when he was at work. So that's my philosophy. So then on day 2, who do you think we can kind of say that Carl is the one who is at Sydney's house for the home invasion? What about, who do you think killed Hannah?
I want to say it might have been Jessica. Just I don't know how her story's gonna pan out if she left, because her son could have been like, no, you weren't at home when I got home and stuff like that. But I don't know. That one's kind of hard because, Carl needed time to hide in Sydney's house, so he couldn't have been there unless he was a Ghostface that killed and dipped and left. I don't know. I honestly don't know who did it, unless it was Stu,
So that's a good point in terms of being in Sydney's attic. When did he get up there? My guess is, you make a good point. So it could have been either or. It could have been Jessica killed Hannah, and then Carl was hiding in Sydney's attic, at some point during the day for a long time. Okay, I'll grant you that. I was gonna say that it's just Carl. I think Jessica was Stu AI. Like she's the one who called Sydney when she was at home with her son, right? So she has her alibi. Everything lines up, right? But I think she called Sydney, and I think Carl was the one who was actually there. But I could be convinced to say that it was Jessica who killed Hannah. So we'll see. Okay, so then the next day, let's see. So I assume you also would agree that it's Jessica who talks to Gail and calls her an irrelevant hag.
Yeah, because you could see it like the way when she first walks up and then talking to her son, she was like, okay. And kind of like probably frustrated her, so that's why she calls her that.
Totally. That's exactly what I think happened. I think that she was so pissed off about Gail Weathers questioning Lucas and like raising all these flags and just being there with Sydney, that's why she called, right? As Stu. So, okay, so then the next day, where do we go? It's going to be just the bar, I guess. And then Tatum being hunted. So we have the bar and we have Tatum's chase in the town. So we were told that it's Marco who is doing most of the chasing in town, right? With, because he says, oh, your daughter
missed my head, yeah.
Right. So, and we can assume Jessica was in the bar with Chloe and her son. So I guess we're all squared up there then.
It's just wild that she killed her son.
I love that. We did Christina Carpenter, in our Scream 7 script. So that was something that I wanted. A lot of people love it. A lot of people find it to be effective. Some people think that it should have been explored more. It should have been explained more. I could have taken a couple of other lines, like maybe like 2 or 3 lines more about it. But I think the way that it was done works because Jessica doesn't give a shit about her son. You know what I mean? In that moment, she's so consumed with Sydney. Her son means as much to her as what she says, It's such a passing thing for her,
Yeah.
But cool. So before we go any further, Hoodie, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and your podcast?
You can find me on X, Instagram at Hoodie Season, and then the podcast is Hoodie Talks Pod on all socials.
Cool. Well, Hoodie, okay. So you wrote to me after Scream 7 and you said that you wanted to talk about Tatum, that you loved this character. So I'm going to just kick this off. And this is going to be included in the updated speed round questions come August, I think. But okay, so Sam/Sam and Tara versus Tatum.
I'm picking Tatum.
Yeah.
And that has no dig at Sam. It's just Tatum to me is a better character.
Well, so why?
Because she doesn't have the evil side. She seemed like you can see the arc from when we meet her to the end when she's talking to Sydney. Like you can see the change to quote unquote final girl, and like Sam's is all over the place. So I would pick Tatum though all the time.
And I think that I agree with you. Tatum is the superior character. And here's what I think is going to happen. Whenever I ask people, this in the speed round. Most people know deep down that Tatum is the better character. But they're going to think that if they say Tatum, they're being mean to Melissa and, and whatever. And they're going to say, well, both. I choose both. I'm going to be like, no. We're not moving on until you answer the question. So, so for me, Tatum, I think that Isabel May is such a great actress. I think that she's much better than Melissa Barrera. She's so effortless in her portrayal. But Tatum, to me, there's something about her, like there is a Sydney quality. I know that sounds really cheesy because she's the daughter, right? But there is something so beautiful about Tatum, so human, so like down to earth and real. I buy Tatum as like a real teenage girl. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of innocence. There's a lot of vulnerability. We see her reacting to these violent situations in very organic ways, not movie star ways. Like, I find her story to be so touching. The whole film, she is trying to gauge Sydney about Sydney's past, even about Tatum herself. She has a fundamental misunderstanding about Tatum. And I just feel like as though, if you think about that compared to the way that Sam views Billy Loomis, like, even like those two things side by side, Tatum, she's curious about it. And like she has the wrong idea. I would say, like when it comes to the way that Sam viewed Billy, I just think that there's a fundamental difference in the way that Tatum approaches the past and tries to understand the past versus the way that Sam does. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, because she's trying to understand her mom, and then like Sam is like she just accepts the fact that her dad, yeah, he's a killer, but she's like trying to avoid it to where she doesn't want to become that, but then eventually because you're doing that, you're becoming that. But like Tatum, she's just trying to understand like why won't you talk to me? Like yes, I've seen it in the movie. I know like my friends talk about this, like, but why can't you talk to me? Like she's just trying to understand like who she came from, why all these people look at her mom the way she is. Because like if she's watching Stabs and we see the way Sydney is, and if she sees her real life mom, she's like, there's no way that's the same person. So when stuff starts to happen now, she's like, well, help me, like let me understand. And Sydney still has her trauma. She doesn't want to open up. So it's like there's just a total difference between Sam and Tatum.
And I think Tatum, I think she's a good person. I think she would be a good friend. And I think that she is a good daughter in a lot of respects. And like she does kind of like the traditional daughter things of like, wanting to be like her mom. Like even just down to like the jacket,
Yep.
I feel like we know so much more about the jacket and the source of all of that than Tatum does herself. So in some ways it's unfair, right? But, at the end of the day, I think she found the jacket because she just wants to kind of be like her mom, which is a very like normal thing for children to want to be like their parents, especially like, as they're growing up.
Yeah, because with her finding the jacket and then, they having the whole scene, she finds out her mom did theater, which she didn't know. Which, if that wasn't Stab, I feel like you would know your mom did theater.
Yeah. Well, maybe it wasn't in Stab 2. Maybe it was, maybe Tatum only saw Stab 1. You don't know what Tatum really knows or what she cares about. Because I don't get the sense that Tatum actually has gone through and done the deep dive of Sydney's life that she claims to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because even like when they're in the bedroom with that scene and the whole jacket thing, and then her mom says when she did, she's like, you do theater? Like the way she like, even on her face, like the way she says it, she's like, you did theater? Like she's finally like, wait, you're opening up to me. And then, Sydney reflects and goes off to something else. And then that's when you have the fucking motherhood. And she's like, great talk.
I think Tatum has such a cool girl vibe to her. Even just the way, like how she walks in she has the jacket, she has the AirPods. So there's just something like effortlessly cool about her. Like even like in the way that Isabel portrays her and just the way that she moves her body. Like, whenever Ben first comes through the window and she says, what are you doing here? And she kind of walks towards him with like half of a smile. She's not being overly sexual. She's not being, too innocent, but she's just being very much like, a unique human being. And that's how she's portraying Tatum. And like also the line whenever the car pulls up when they're walking to school and she puts her arms on the window and she says, hey babe, again, she's not being like overly sexual, but I find her to be just so cool. And in a way that's kind of like Tatum Riley. I think Tatum Evans is less domineering than Tatum Riley was in terms of like social control, but there's a similar cool girl vibe about them that they share.
Yeah, because like that's one thing I loved about her because, we all know these characters are actually older than what they're playing, but she plays that teenage role so well. Like I believe she was 17 years old. Because like me and my wife, we work with the band. So I'm around 16, 18-year-olds all the time. And like, that's how they act. Like that's how they are. So I'm like, you played this so well. Like, it was so
Yeah.
believable that you're 17, even though I know you're not. But
Yeah, no, I love that. And I loved her relationship with Sydney. I loved how complicated it was. I loved how, Tatum, she didn't think that she was doing anything wrong by asking these very basic questions. And yet every time she does, it's just like, it hits us, the audience,
Yeah.
who knows the depth of why, of what Tatum's asking that she doesn't really get, It's interesting. I think that the relationship between them was approached in a very original way. They didn't do the traditional, like, Laurie and John Halloween H2O. And there's dimension to how Sydney and Tatum connect with each other.
I'm so glad we didn't get the H2O like dynamic.
Yeah.
Even I'm not saying H2O was bad, but I just love what we got with 7.
And it's original. It's
Yeah.
something, it surprised me. And it surprised, I think, a lot of Scream fans who, thought about this for years. But so, one thing about Tatum that I really like is the way that Kevin, he molds her with the Laurie Strode of like 1978, like that, like kind of like vulnerability and innocence.
Mhm.
But also giving her like moments of like, there's a lot of like a little bit of Sally from Texas Chainsaw. I think I think if I had to pick like 2 final girls that Tatum reminds me of, I would say those 2. The character, in a way, even though she's very modern, she feels like a throwback because she is so vulnerable. There isn't anything about her that's girl boss or generically like I'm Superwoman.
Yeah, definitely. Like, she gives that early Laurie Strode vibe, like that beginning of the movie, had like maybe halfway through. That's what she
Yeah.
gives before she gives like the I'm still Sydney's daughter in a sense.
You know what I just realized? So both Sam and Tatum both say, "I'm not like you," to their parents. So Sam says it to Billy in the car whenever she's driving away from the Meeks' house. She says, "I'm not like you," Sorry. And then Tatum says it to Sydney whenever she's holding the gun and she's saying, I can't do it,
Mhm.
Mom. Amazing to see
is.
the difference in
Like, it's the same line, but you can see like how better the Tatum one was. I'm not trying to dig at Sam's character. It's just that's just how it is.
Look, it is what it is. Like, and I don't think that was an accident, unless if Guy Busick really does just write the bare minimum, and like he didn't know that he repeated his own line. But, it's from the acting, from the reason why she's saying it, how she's saying it, what the conditions are, and how she's reacting to the situation. It's just night and day. So, people are always dying for chase scenes, and I feel like Tatum really gets a great one. I feel like this is like the most traditional chase scene we've gotten in a Scream movie probably since Scream 3 through the Stab 3 set.
Yeah, I loved her chasing because it starts off with her, not even questioning her boyfriend at the time. Like, she was like, okay, I'm gonna hit you. I'm getting out of here because I don't, because that looked very suspicious of him having that on his computer. But then that's when she runs straight into Ghostface and she runs. I love the fact that she picked up whatever that sign was and hit Ghostface.
Yeah.
It's like she wasn't scared. She was like, let me, like, that's where I thought like that Sydney inside of her was coming out.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've said this dozens of times at this point, but like, I love the fact that she does technically beat the Ghostface. It's just the fact that there are 2 Ghostfaces that come that really distort her plans of triumph. But I love that, like, she, first of all, that's terrifying, and I can't wait to see what Tatum is like in the next movie, to see how did this trauma affect her, this trauma of being chased through the town, shooting, learning to shoot a gun, taking a ghost face down, then 2 of them attack you and kidnap you, and then you're tied up with a knife to your throat while your mom watches, and then you have to save your mom, and all of your friends and your boyfriend are dead. That is a lot of weight to carry. In some ways, even heavier than what Sydney had to bear.
It felt like she had to go through even more than Sydney did.
Yeah, imagine, like, it's like if Sydney, the trauma of both Scream 1 and 2 is what Tatum is, gets from just this movie.
Just this one.
So
it's like Jessica created the Sydney 2.0 that she wanted to without, like, she won in a sense, but was still dying. Like, she created the Sydney 2.0.
Definitely. So I'm very interested to see what she does in Scream 8. But I love the fact that she's the one who gets to save Tatum. I think there's just such poetry in that like Sydney tries holding Tatum back so much. And then, and tries like protecting her and does the overbearing thing only for Tatum to be the one to physically save the day. What did you think of the epilogue and Sydney's big speech about Tatum Riley?
It finally showed that Sydney was willing to open up because, everything she didn't, the reason she didn't want to open up to her so she doesn't go through what she just went through. But now she's like, well, I might as well just tell you everything now. So it was amazing to see that. Because I still love that Tatum was like, that's it for now. Like, that's fine for now. Like, I'm just glad that you're talking to me.
Well, and then how amazing and how lucky are we to get that final shot of like Sydney walking away with Tatum, but also Gale.
That was amazing. I loved it because it just shows that those were the two girls that, really helped Sydney because, having kids saves your life regardless of how you look at it. So having, even though she has the two little ones that we don't really get to see that much, but Gail being there too is like, you've been through it with me, even though we don't see eye to eye on things. Like now we're together now.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. What did you think of how we saw Sydney's daughters, and what are your thoughts on them for the future?
I'm glad that they did it that way because I didn't think it would be hard for them to put the two twins there at the same time. So I thought I had them, being away because of construction and stuff. It was a perfect way of they're not getting rid of the fact that she had those two little ones in the stroller in 5. And I thought they did very well. Now I do wonder how they're going to do it because they're probably 6 in this, maybe. I don't know how old they would be.
They would be.
Because they looked a little bit older than what my daughter is now, and she's 5, so they had to be like around 7 or 8. So
well, there you go. We don't really ever we don't know how long it's been since Scream 5 or Scream 6. I would guess a good 5 years since Scream 6. So I guess that sounds right to me. Yeah.
I just wonder how they're gonna. Because with them setting up the daughters thing, they made it to where they can make so many more movies. I just wonder how they're gonna do the twins because they're twins. I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, I assume that they're twins as well. And I think that they're twins, and I think that there's a million things you could do with them. I just hope that we get to see them as little girls in the movie. I don't want to just jump to them being teenagers. I want to see and play with the idea of like Ghostface coming after Sydney's two little daughters, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense. 'Cause, I mean, you and Joey did a perfect job when y'all involved kids in y'all's script, so I don't see how they couldn't do it. They just need to hire Joey. They just need to hire Joey at this point.
They need to hire Joey, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit more about the twins here so what did you think of the fact that they were working with Gale? Were you spoiled on that before going in?
I didn't know anything about like what they were going to. I knew they would show up with Gale because of the trailer. You could see Chad get out. So I knew that's how they were involved, which only made sense because they were all in New York. But I didn't mind it because we don't know what they went to school for.
Yeah.
So it's like that could have been what they went to school for, is to do stuff like that. So it wasn't far-fetched for me. Like it actually made sense to me.
It makes sense to me too, because like also like, the world is hard out there in terms of like, how to get jobs and like who you know and who you blow. That's how you move up the professional ladder, and professional network means everything. So for me, if I was Chad or Mindy, and I survived 2 attacks with Gale Weathers, and I knew this really famous, wealthy woman who works in media, and she's the head honcho, she's the boss, I would go to her. I would be like, Gale, can you help me? Especially if I was Mindy and I studied media or whatever. Like, I think that it makes perfect sense that they would work with Gale. So I don't know. I think that them working with her was really smart. And you know what I liked about this too? I love that we got to see Mindy truly have a direction in life and have purpose other than to be the Randy or to be just the comedy. For me, the comedy with her comes out more naturally because she has a purpose, you know what I mean? And it's a very focused thing. She's not just all over the place like she was in Scream 6.
Yeah, totally agree. And then you also could look at it as like Gail feels sorry for what happened with Randy, so yes, she's going to give, the niece and nephew a chance at, to help them, like kind of like to make up for her, like what happened to Randy in Scream 2.
Yeah. And again, I didn't even consider that. Someone brought that up to me recently. I was like, wow, mind blown. So it's very, very good observation there. So, and what are your thoughts on the fact that Tatum actually kind of gets to link up with Chad and Mindy, and like they have this scene in the house together, but then they also, I guess they have 2 scenes in the house, and then they go to the bar together. What are your thoughts on Chad and Mindy kind of being lumped in with Tatum there?
I liked it because to me it made sense, because if you look at it, you had Sydney and Randy were like best friends, and then now you have like that, like her daughter and then Randy's niece and nephew are becoming like the friends. Even though, I mean, I know they're probably age gaps, but it made sense to me. Like it made it to where I think Tatum would learn a lot more from them. Because we don't know like the conversations they had going to the bar and just stuff like that.
And also it just makes sense to me, like in a way, like, not that I ever want Sydney and Gale to be phased out, but like in a way they're almost forming a new trio. And I like that trio. I liked their scenes together. I liked the dynamic of Tatum being really shy with them. It was so funny to be like, Chad and Mindy are both kind of like huge personalities, especially Mindy. kind of intimidating. And Tatum walks in, she's kind of mousy, and she's just like, so how are the towels? Clearly she wants to talk to them, and she wants to kind of like, and they're both, that even like Mindy on the couch to her, like Tatum sits down, and like, I don't know if you noticed it, when Mindy sits down on the couch and she's talking about Agatha Christieing all the suspects, she scooches and scooches and scooches closer to Tatum. It's almost like, we're just like, it has no boundaries, has no sense of like how, shy Tatum actually really is.
Yeah. And I also liked when Tatum was like, why are you here? It was kind of like them answering talking to the fans like, why are you here? And they kind of like answered it like, this is why we're here.
Mm-hmm. You brought up that shot of them with Gail, and it's just like, that to me is like, wow, this is the return of the Scream 6 cast. These are the people who are carrying over, that frame. It's the Gail moment, but it's also their moment. Their moment. And so I really love the construction of that sequence for them too. I mean, even just like from the very first time that they even get to talk, they're like different people here. It just like, because they open the trunk and Chad says that was horrifying, and Mindy says that was awesome, and I feel like they were reflecting how the audience was feeling at that moment, because that's, Gail's entrance is one of like the top 3 things that people have complimented this movie for,
I love that scene whenever she runs over Ghostface.
Yeah.
It gave me like Final Destination vibes.
The thing I liked about them, I liked them as siblings, and we talked about this a little bit, but them just getting to talk to each other and bicker back and forth. Chad went from being like the hunk, the romantic lead, the leading man, to comedic relief. It shows a different side of him, and it just also brings out the best in him and Mindy, and it brings out their human connection, and they were so much stronger having like a task to do together and bickering their way through it, and kind of like, push and pull, joke, I don't know.
Yeah, like it makes what they're doing makes so much sense, because like even at the end of the movie when they're doing, setting up the camera and stuff, like just the back and forth bickering they're having, and then when she finally gets it right, he's like, I didn't even have it recorded. Like just that, I love that, because you could tell they're siblings at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You can believe the twins. Like, you can believe it.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is we see them starting from scratch. You know what I mean? Post-credit, like, I'm so glad that, like, that post-credit scene exists. It's like, in my opinion, it's like the perfect version of a post-credit scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's informative about them. It doesn't feel out of place, in terms of, like, interrupting the tone of, like, the Sydney and Gale, because we get enough distance from the ending with the emotions there. I loved that. And I just loved, like, the fact that, like, okay, this is, like, step 1, okay? Mindy finally gets what she wants. Gale gives her the opportunity. So now we're at step 1, and we see her making mistake after mistake, Chad making fun of her. It's just, I don't know, so funny.
Yeah, I love it. I love their like bickering. I don't know. I love them in this movie.
Mm-hmm, me too. I just love the fact that Gail actually hands over the microphone to Mindy. I think it's a very short moment. It's a subtle moment, but I think it speaks volumes to Gail Weathers as it does just for the moment of movement for Mindy.
It shows how much Gail has grown. Because if you would Scream 3 or Scream 4, Gail would not have done that.
Yeah. And I just want to explain, people have said like, oh, well, why do you, blah, blah, blah. Are Chad and Mindy really that much better here? And I would say yes. And here's a good example, a key piece of evidence as to why. In Scream 6, when they're going through the suspects, I feel as though it's weird, and this is why the Mindy shtick in those 2 movies didn't work as well, especially 6. It's like she was just constantly accusing people that she actually knows in real life, people that she sees every day, accusing them of being murderers. Like, that's weird, you know what I mean? Versus here, I think the brilliant thing about them going to the bar with Tatum is, they are complete outsiders. They don't know who these people are. So it makes their analyzing each of the suspects and they're investigating each of the friends, better. It makes it feel more realistic, and like they're actually trying to solve things, and like actually like, when you don't know somebody, you can kind of insult them and you don't really care because you don't know them, versus being randomly insensitive to people that you know and see on a daily basis,
It just made sense in this one. It's like you said, like she was like, my bid's on creepy kid. Because she doesn't know these people.
Well, I also love the fact that they want to leave the bar because they're worried about Tatum being alone with Gen Z Billy Loomis. Yeah. Because again, that shows them as being caring and thoughtful, and like they want to protect her. And that, to me, you're showing me why, and you're pulling it out of me why I should love these people, as opposed to just the fact that, oh, they're part of the core 4 and they're related to Randy. Love them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like you can tell they care for Tatum.
Totally.
Unlike the other, it looked like they didn't care about the other kids. They were just worried about Tatum.
Well, and the other thing too is like, I love the fact that Jessica whenever she was at the bar, she was targeting both her son. Her son was the main target. She wanted, and that's why he has such a spectacular looking death, right? In a ornate, picturesque death. And I think she wanted to kill Chloe as well, because I'm sure she knew that, Lucas had a crush on her, and moms they're very protective of their sons when it comes to like other women that they're dating. So that all makes sense to me. I think it's interesting that she doesn't really give a shit about the twins. The twins and Gail, they are interfering with her plan. They literally killed Jessica's partner and interrupted the flow of what she wanted to happen with Carl. So, I think it's so interesting that she doesn't even give a shit about stabbing them or making sure that they're dead or targeting them,
Yeah, because they were never on her hit list from the get-go. They're like, you know what, let me just get you out the way and let me continue what I'm doing.
Totally. Yeah. One last thing about Mindy and Chad here. I think it's so funny, too, like that that the movie is self-aware enough, and they're self-aware enough as characters for Mindy to want to do the speech. Chad says, Mindy, we're not doing that. And Mindy says, okay. But I'm still going to do it, I don't know. And I also just think that something that was very clear to me about Mindy here as opposed to Mindy in the other films is like when it came to her speech about nostalgia, I finally dawned on me like, oh, she doesn't actually like truly 100% believe this. I think that she's just kind of spitting out ideas whenever she does these speeches without really knowing the destination. Because like she ends with who knows anyways, that Billy Loomis had a secret love child. So I feel like she was just kind of talking and trying to make sense. And maybe that's what she has been doing all along. Because like in Scream 6, it feels like a planned, rehearsed speech. You know what I mean? So I think, again, that's why that didn't really work there.
Yeah, this one just felt genuine. Like she doesn't know what's going on, so she's just trying to figure out what to do in a sense like that, instead of, like you said, it felt scripted in 6.
Yeah. I want to ask you about, let's just switch gears now back to Sydney and Gail. So if you could say what made Sydney and Gail better here versus 5 and 6, other than just the fact that we spend more time with them, what would you say?
I think the relationship seemed more real than it did in 5. I mean, because she shows up, because the reason she showed up to Woodsboro in the first place, because Dewey died. So she's trying to comfort and be there for Gail. And then at the end, they're surviving or whatever. But in this one, you could see like they care for each other, because Gail knows unless Sydney gets involved, it's not going to end. And then you can see like at the radio station that she sees that Gail's hurting. So she's like, she really does care for her. So you could see like the real relationship there.
Well, and I would say also too, they're just so much truer to the people that we knew from 1 to 4. You know what I mean? Sydney, I can't tell you how much I love Sydney. Even in like the first 30 minutes before the first phone call with Stu, she is just like, that is the Sydney from Scream 1, 2, and 3 and 4. It's just effortless. It's just like the same. That's our girl, And I think that and here's a good question. Would that have been achieved but for Kevin Williamson? Could that have been achieved with a Christopher Landon or a Karan Kusama or a Radio Silence? I don't think it could have been achieved as successfully as it was. And I think that's why it's so important that Kevin was here and that he did this movie. And I wish that he would continue on, but it is what it is. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think we would. I think Scream 7 would have flopped had we not had Kevin, because he had to come in and rewrite a lot of stuff, and I'm glad he did, because you can tell what he rewrote. And it's just, I felt like the Sydney and Tatum like mother and daughter relationship would not have been that good. Even the whole family with Mark would not have been that good, because I think he came out and said that he really like worked on that. And then even like at the epilogue, that's all him. Like I just feel like the way people are talking down on 7, it would have been that way had Kevin not wrote this. They knocked it out of the park. Like every little thing they needed to do right to make sure this movie was perfect. Well, not perfect, but did the numbers it did, they did right. Like like you just said, the Gail, the Sydney, the Tatum, everything was, they did it just right.
As it pertains to Gail, I think Gail is excellent in Scream 5. But even then, compare that Gail to this Gail. Again, it just feels like this is so much truer to Gail Weathers. You know what I mean? And maybe like we just got really, I'm speaking for myself, maybe the Gail in Scream 5 is a little bit overrated because Courtney Cox got to do some amazing crying. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she was amazing in 5, but I just hate what they did to her in 6. I felt like, I don't know, but to me, she was her Scream 4 Gail in this one, and I liked it. She was Scream 4 Gail with the trauma that happened from 5 and 6.
Totally. And, with Gail, because like you can look at Scream 7 and be like, oh, well, I mean, she's only kind of really in Act 2, like she is in Scream 6, but also the epilogue. That she gets like to have 10 scenes in Act 2. You know what I mean? She's in so much of Act 2, and we see so many different sides of her. We see the comedy, we see the drama, we see the sad, we see the injured, we see the investigative, we see the connection with Sydney. We see the past, we see, what she's dealing with in the future, how she's hiding things. It's just like, and we get to see new levels of her friendship with Sydney. I don't think that Radio Silence could have made this movie as it pertains to Gail and Sydney and their relationship.
I mean, we see what they did with both of those characters from their 2 movies they made, so. And it's crazy that this is the 7th movie in a franchise and it's this good.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty awesome. So one last question is, what would you like to see in Scream 8? Is there anything that you think can be improved? So if we did a lot of an analysis from 6 to 7 and showing how much things improved under the guise of Kevin Williamson. What are your thoughts about Scream 8? Is there anything that you think that we could really improve, or do you think it's a matter of just maintaining the momentum?
I think they need to maintain it because the twins were used so well and so was Tatum. I feel like you should use those 3 as like your main characters in the next movie. Like don't sideline Gil and Sydney to a point where like they did in like 5 and 6 where they're not really characters. But I feel like you could still use Sydney and Gil to a point. But I feel like you should. I love Tatum as a character. I just hope they do it right.
Cool. Well, Hoodie, thank you so much for coming. Please remind everybody where they can find you.
On Instagram, all the socials at Hoodie Season, and then the podcast at Hoodie Talks Podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Hoodie.
Thanks.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
Get another beer, you want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back!
Dear God, Ryan,